is oftentimes the main core muscle. Now the problem with that is if you don't have the integrity in the thoraco-columnar fascia, if the lats aren't doing their job, if the glutes are weak, then that TVA has a very unstable spine to attach to. So the TVA can't do its job if the other muscles in the posterior chain are not doing their job. So transverse abdominis, super important. You can use the visualization that it's a weight belt or a corset, basically encapsulating that whole midsection. Hannah was giving somebody a description of how to recruit it today, which made a lot of sense. When you're exhaling, you're standing up taller as you recruit it versus pulling yourself down to recruit it. So you want that muscle group to pull in but not pull down. So a lot of times if you're cueing TVA recruitment, I just have people maintain good posture, poke into their stomach, and just bear down without doing this, because that's going to get into rectus abdominis, obliques, kind of that trunk flexion, versus that, let's go back, versus that coming together of that whole hoop system. So if that TVA is not pulling everything in and the rectus abdominis starts pulling everything down, then look at my posture. Now I'm flattening my spine. Now I'm helping gravity to pull me further forward faster. So just be aware when you are teaching TVA recruitment that you are maintaining that neutral lordosis or lordotic curve in the spine as you're activating that muscle group. All right.
I've heard the cue of pulling your belly button into your spine as well.
Perfect. Yeah, belly button into your spine. Perfect cue. Yep. Yeah, just, I mean, any way you can cue it, just make sure that you're watching the mechanics of the spine. And then try to get people in different positions, planks, push-ups, prone, supine, pull-ups, lunges, squats, just always, you can always cue that. You can just, I mean, I've been doing a lot of just having people stand up, balance, bring their arms over their head, and then lock it down. I'm just hold that, and then maybe rotate just a little bit. Oh, you know, just cueing it is going to make the difference. So no matter what they're doing, teaching them to engage that muscle more is only going to reinforce the lumbodorsal thoraco-columnar fascial complex. Wow, there's a lot of syllables. All right, let's see. Let's go back. Do we have any other muscles to talk about? We went over TVA, psoas, lats, glute max. Sorry, I'm jumping around here. Psoas muscles, internal, external obliques. You gave me a great description of internal and external obliques. Could you repeat that for us again? Because that was a good way to teach it.
So we're just going on the right side. The right external oblique goes to the opposite. So it's going to turn you to the left.
So the right external oblique
Goes opposite.
goes opposite.
Yeah.
And that's going this way?
Yeah.
So that it's pulling, or it's pulling from here to here.
Right.
So it's going to go this way.
Yeah, and then so the internal oblique goes ipsilateral, so it's then the same way that it's on, the same side that it's on.
Okay, so the internal is pulling you.
Yeah, so if you think about it, if I'm going to go to the right, then it's going to be my left external and then my right internal. Okay. Right, so then you just have like a rod goes down through here, and then if I go to the left, like that.
Cool. Now, you guys got all that?
Internal same side, external opposite.
Ah, kind of like what other muscle group?
Sternocleidomastoid.
Mm-hmm.
Sternocleidomastoid.
So the left one pulls you to the right. The right one pulls you to the left.
Oh, I was going to say something about the obliques. That's like a really good one to look for athletes. Like if you're like baseball, volleyball, any like, because they'll usually have like one side that they're really dominant.
Ah,
like,
yes.
internal, and then
So-
they'll probably go the other way and they're like,
Tennis.
tennis.
Yeah, so-
Or like that if they're recovering, usually they have one side that's really weak.
So any one-sided movement is going to cause a lot of imbalance in athletes. Yeah. Cool. Good point. Golfers are.
Golfers do importance to that.
The thing about golf is you can play it till you're 80 or 90. You're not throwing baseballs 90 miles an hour after a certain age, but golf you can keep jacking it up. All right, so let's talk about kinetic chain and the lumbar area. So our hips, the hip sockets, are those mobility or stability? Mobility. Okay, and then my thoracic is mobility. So the one in between, right through here, stability. How'd you guys know? All right, so think about the lordotic curve being, or the lumbar area of the spine needing as much support and stability as possible. Think about all the muscles that lock down on it. You got your lats, you got your glutes, you got the TVA, you got all your internal, external obliques, you got your QL, all the erectors. So their job is to maintain that neutral position while I'm putting everything else in different positions. So I want that lower part of my back to be able to be as stable as possible while I'm rotating above that area or rotating below that area. Yeah, so if you watch, my hand never really changes position. It's always flat while I'm turning my trunk, rotating here. No matter what my body is doing, we want to maintain that neutral position. Now, it does, just like the knee is a stable joint, it still flexes and extends, right? So we still want flexion and extension through there, a slight amount. So we do want it to be able to flex and extend. So if I get that way down here, I'm starting to flex that out and then come back up. And that's not a problem being able to go in and out of that flexion and extension through the lumbar. What becomes a problem is when you're chronically flexed or chronically extended. And then you're going to start generating some overuse issues. So stability is important, obviously, but also teaching a little bit of movement through there, proper movement through the lumbar is important as well. So just kind of the natural curves of the spine. We do have that inward lordotic curve. A lot of people don't realize we do have a kyphotic curve down here too. So the sacrum does begin the curve, or the spring effect of the spine. We have inward in the cervical, outward in the thoracic, inward in the lordotic lumbar, in the lumbar region, and then kyphotic in the sacrum. So just like a spring or a slinky, we've got every other curve going in and out. So if this flattens out, what's that going to do to the rest of the spine? It could potentially just make it not spring anymore. So the spring is sprung once that happens. So think about everything we're doing with client assessment or program design, trying to maintain those neutral curves, and also knowing that we can come out of those, but going back into those are super important, or at least maintaining that curve more often than not, especially if you're trying to correct low back issues or any kind of injuries. You can correlate a lot of stuff with the body mechanics, like bad knee pain or shoulder pain or neck pain, to these curves not being in line. So super important. So let's talk about how the pelvis and how the thoracic keep that lordotic curve in check. So last week we were talking about anterior and posterior pelvic tilt, right? So what's my spine doing, or what's my lumbar vertebrae doing while I'm going into anterior? Am I in too much? Yeah, so we're in lordosis now. And then if I go into posterior tilt, now I'm almost going into flat. I don't think I go into kyphosis, but I'm definitely not in my neutral anymore. So, I've seen people that have, when I come in for an assessment, this is how they walk. That's not good for anything. So making sure neutral curve through the lower back with the pelvic positioning, and that could be hip flexor tightnesses, that could be too much tightness in the hamstring, could be pulling me back, too much weakness in my back, all those erectors aren't working, maybe my glutes are pulling down because I'm sitting so much. So lots of things can cause my pelvis to roll under. Now, so let's go back to neutral. So we say thoracic. The thoracic plays a role in the lumbar vertebrae as well. So now we've got neutral pelvis, but now I can kind of collapse here. Now I'm flattening through that upper part of the lumbar, or I'm going into too much lordosis there. But again, that's independent of my pelvis. That's in the thoracic. So if people are tight through their chest, potentially, or their abdominals, could be pulling that whole rib cage down, which is flattening that spine out. So optimally, we want people in a neutral pelvis and a neutral thoracic region, so we keep that neutral lumbar curve. So differentiate where the imbalance is. You might have people with good pelvic mechanics but horrible thoracic mechanics, or vice versa. So if you're trying to assess or do program design, again, look at those different regions. Are they working together? Are they working against each other? Just be wary that you can correct this issue above and below. Anybody knows who that is? Was that you 2 years ago when you stopped, before you stopped roiding? Oh yeah?
Yeah, he came into our office in Sarasota. So,
Oh, cool.
yeah, I had to put an elbow in his calf.
That's probably about all you can. It's probably the smallest muscle in his body, right?
Man, he's sweating, man.
That's probably bigger than my trunk, his calf. Yeah, so that's, I think, he broke the world record deadlift. I think it was 1,100 pounds. So when everything's working through that power diamond, humans have the potential to lift over 1,100 pounds. So he had to generate all that force right through that weakest point, and then all the way up through that to lift that weight off the ground. So if his lats aren't recruiting, if his glutes not working, none of that's going to happen. So just thought that was an interesting picture. All right, so let's talk about exercises that we can do for keeping stability in that region. So we got back extensions. Who would like to be my victim? All right, so let's slide you out a little bit. There we go. Let's lie on your stomach with your head down here. All right, so McKenzie protocol, pretty much the opposite of sitting. Undoing flexion in the front and working on more extension in the back. So just holding this position is going to remind the curves of the spine to go from here to here. Now, a lot of athletes will have too much extension because the back's so strong, and they'll actually can get to the point where you can lock the lumbar together, and you're actually deactivating the muscles because now it's just bone on bone. So finding the right balance in a back extension, especially with athletes, is important. So back extensions, we can make this so passively we can have you lay like this. I oftentimes use this as a way to correct people's posture before they go to bed. So a lot of people read before they go to bed. So you can sit against your headboard and read like this when you're going to sleep, or you can prop a pillow underneath your chest and put the book out in front of you and read like this, which will remind your brain that you don't need to be flexed at the trunk. You actually need to be extended at the trunk. And then when she falls asleep, she can just put the book to the bedside table, and she's more than likely to sleep lengthened out versus wanting to just fall asleep into like a fetal position. Because you've been shortening this right before you go to bed by doing this. And then going to sleep, you're going to probably stay in that same position. But if you can lengthen all this before, a few minutes before you go to bed, your brain's going to be like, oh, okay, we can fall asleep like that. So that's just a good kind of homework assignment for people, that, especially with back issues. Find out how they're sleeping, or before they go to sleep, to kind of correct that. So now we can turn this into an active exercise. Can you bring your arms down to your side? Down to your side. Yeah. All right. So now let's lift your legs up as well. So we'll go right into more advanced. First things first, we'll go legs down will be our first step, and then just lifting the trunk. Now what's interesting about this exercise is, can you relax your butt muscles? Relax your glutes? Good. Now squeeze your glutes. Good. Now relax your butt. Now squeeze your butt. Good. So you can see how the whole spine kind of sits up a little taller when her glutes engage. So that's a good demonstration to teach people how important the glutes are when it comes to maintaining the strength in the lower back. And then getting the legs up is obviously going to get the hamstrings and the rest of the posterior chain. If you want to tuck your chin a little bit. Also be wary, people's eyes will tell their brain that they're going higher than they actually are. So come down a little bit and then lift your head up. Now it's going to be a little bit too much cervical extension. So I usually have just people just look straight down the whole time, tuck your chin, and keep your eyes on that as you go higher with the trunk. There we go. Now come down, but keep your eyes there. Good. And that's going to keep the cervical spine a little more neutral. So back extensions are very good for, I kind of call it the anti-sitting or the opposite of sitting, because it's pretty much doing everything sitting doesn't. So that's something people can do safely at home. Now, as they get stronger, and she could potentially not need this because she's going into almost hyperextension. But if she doesn't have a history of back issues and she's athletic and young, I wouldn't worry about that. But just be wary about that. And we've been kind of talking a lot this week about the arms overhead. Yeah, it's really tough to keep the trap. So let's have you do arms over your head, just to kind of, good. And that's obviously going to work everything back here, all the muscle groups that we do want to engage posterior chain, but it is kind of challenging to keep people's traps disengaged. Yeah, there you go. Well, actually, she got it, but her arms had to come out a little bit to make that happen. So, plus, as the lever arm gets longer, now these muscles are having to do even a significant increase in workload. And McGill in the low back disorders books recommends not doing arms overhead because it increases, I think, the force like times 2 in the lower back. So it's like 3,000 newtons with the arms down this side. It's like 6,000 newtons with the arms overhead. Yeah, and I think, and with the arms down,